Sweden is introducing border controls for everyone trying to enter the country. It says it can no longer handle the number of refugee arrivals. Sweden's accepted the most refugees per citizen of any EU country. Now, one focus in these border controls is the Öresund Bridge, one of the main entry points to Sweden. The Öresund Bridge connects the Danish capital of Copenhagen with the Swedish cities of Malmö and Lund. It's the longest railroad bridge in Europe, but the restrictions affect everyone entering by train, bus or ferry. All travelers, including thousands of daily commuters and other EU citizens, will have to show photo ID. It's another blow to Europe's open border policy. It will be the first time in decades Swedes and Danes must show passports to leave Denmark for Sweden. All right, let's get more on this. I'm joined now by our Simon McGregor-Wood from London. Now, Simon, we've just recapped some of the new measures taken by Sweden. But I'm interested to find out what's changed, because Sweden used to be a country that welcomed all asylum seekers.
That's right. I think the change has been this enormous influx. We saw throughout 2015 over 1 million refugees and migrants entering the European Union, mostly through Greece and through the Balkan route, but ending up in huge numbers in Germany and Sweden, because, as you say, historically, Sweden set itself up as a beacon of hope for people escaping war and persecution. An open all hours policy has been part of Swedish political tradition in recent years. But the numbers in 2015 simply overwhelmed the system, according to the Swedish government. The Social Democratic and Green Party coalition government of Prime Minister Stefan Löfven was only in September talking about how Europe should be welcoming refugees. But then we saw this massive spike in the autumn. 10,000 refugees and migrants entering Sweden every week. We saw Swedish cities and towns running out of hostel beds, starting to use schools and disuse offices, people arriving, being bused up to remote rural locations all across Sweden. And in November, the government finally said, we simply cannot carry on as we are. They do it with no great enthusiasm, but they are saying that they simply have to impose these controls to try and get the numbers down to what it considers a more manageable level.
Simon, as we've stated, one of the main entry points into Sweden is the Öresund Bridge from Copenhagen into Sweden. I'm curious, what are the Danes saying about all this?
Well, they're not very happy. We are beginning to hear complaining noises from people like the Danish Transport Minister, because the principal checking is being done on Danish soil. Before today, you could get a train from anywhere in Denmark passing through Copenhagen Airport, and without stopping, that train would go across the bridge through the rail link and enter Sweden. Not so today. From today, you have to change trains, cross the platform. One of the platforms is now protected by a wire fence to protect people making a dash for the Swedish-bound train. The Swedish railway companies themselves rejected this condition, saying we simply can't afford to check all these people. And the Danes are saying the same thing today. They're saying this is going to cost a huge amount of money, possibly, according to the Danish rail company, the DSB, as much as $150,000 a day. So the Danes don't like it at all because of the logistical and cost implications, but also politically. In recent times, they have not been as generous to refugees and migrants as the Swedes. So the question might also be for the Danes, well, what happens if we find all these people without the necessary papers? They're stuck in Denmark. And under the present Danish government, that won't be popular either.
Now, Simon, when you look at the decision taken by Sweden, this is just the latest call by a European Union country saying they can't, quote, handle the influx. This is a message that we've seen in many countries throughout Europe as they try to deal with the worst refugee crisis since World War II, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, and what is surprising about this case is that it's the Swedes, because they, as I say, they have this historic tradition of welcoming everybody, no questions asked. You'll find a safe haven here in Sweden. But it's just the scale of the problem that we saw in 2015, particularly with the summer and then the autumn, the sheer numbers of people entering Sweden. We were there in November having a look at this story. We went to a town on the southern coast. There were 4,000 young Afghan miners in that town of 40,000 people, almost 10% of the population. They were living in disused warehouses, disused offices. They were simply running out of space. Now, this law, passed in November, will only serve for 3 years. It's a 3-year exemption from this much fabled European Schengen system. It's an attempt by the Swedes to get the numbers down to what they consider are more manageable, from 10,000 in the autumn of 2015 to about 1,000 a week. They can deal with that, they think. It's easier in the winter when the flow is diminished anyway. The real test of this new system, I think, will come in the spring.
All right, Simon McGregor Wood joining us live from London. Thank you for that.